Right, afternoon, evening, whatever we're going at now. The green machine is back in the workshop, as you see. Following on from quite a few comments and a lot of messages, well, trying to provoke me to do something with this. I'll be honest, part pushed along by obviously doing Sam's cabby. And as you probably know or noticed, it is now very much firmly sealed at the top of the wall of boost, which, not sure how we feel about that. So, anyway, I've been inspired to have a look at this, or try and come up with a bit of a game plan more than anything, which I haven't really decided on yet. So obviously, all long-standing members of the channel, probably 90% of them, or few should I say, probably originally subscribed because of the build we did on this, or the multiple builds we did on this. And for anyone new, I've owned this car for a long time. I can't really remember when. It was obviously originally a black Phase 1D turbo with an XUD. It's the 1.9 indirect mechanically injected engine. Obviously that went through, at least 4 or 5 different iterations of turbos and the supercharger, and then the eventual compound setup. Made lots of power, pretty cool back in the day. This is a long time ago now. Then progressed on to the 16 valve HDI engine. Originally I made it like a mechanically injected engine, or MTDI I think we called it in the day. It's this engine that's in the car now, in fact, but it had a mechanical VE rotary pump on it. Again, made lots of power, it was cool. And then that came out, and then it progressed on a bit further again. I think that's also the point where it got painted green, for whatever reason. There's lots of videos on that if you go back and look. So then we moved on to a common rail setup, so the engine went back to being common rail, which is obviously what it was originally. So when we put the CP3 on, and it's when we went to the Adaptronic engine management and all the custom software and stuff on there. And we upgraded the compound setup again, got rid of the supercharger, went just to the HX35 and the 2260, which obviously now is fairly old, but still capable of making a lot of power. Obviously started tuning it and stuff back in the day. Makes, I can't actually remember, to be honest with you, I think it's 225, 230 horsepower, somewhere in that region. Basically it's the injectors completely maxed out. The injectors were the limiting factor, and the next stage really was to sort the flow bench out, get the injectors sorted and make some proper power. Now that was probably 4 or 5 years ago or something like that. I've lost track. Since then we did take it on a Euro trip. Obviously you remember the videos from doing that. So it did a few thousand mile, well, quite a few thousand mile around Europe. Believe it or not, virtually no issues. Considering the sort of one-off uniqueness of it, it actually did pretty well to achieve that, I thought, at the time, and that was several years ago now. And since then it has legitimately just been parked doing absolutely nothing. Lots of people have made comments because it's been in the background of other videos, and sadly it has been parked outside basically that whole time. The last couple of months I've had it in the shop here, but up until then it has been parked outside, and because of that the paint has suffered. Obviously I painted it myself in the old workshop, which is far from ideal, but the problem is I didn't lacquer it, and obviously now it's faded like mad. Now I'm sure probably with some hard work it'll buff up again, but I'm just kind of ignoring that for a minute because that's just a cosmetic issue. So obviously it was built with a fairly heavy decomp in the engine, and that was largely, to be honest, because they were the only rods I had out of my XUD. So we had the shorter rods in the original XUD to reduce the compression to try and save the engines, because we just kept blowing them up. Obviously they're a very expensive set of com rods, so I reused them in the HDI. And I did deck the block significantly to try and increase that compression a little bit, but obviously it's still down from where it should be. Because of that, obviously it doesn't like starting when it's cold, or at least it just throws smoke out continuously until it's warmed up, which is just really annoying if you want to use it every day. And then there's just lots of other stuff that I did back then, which, you know, I wouldn't do now. So I think what I've decided is it would be quite good to try and get the car back to a more usable state. Obviously still pushing the power envelope forward, because that's always been the point of this thing. Apologies, we had a GoPro fail then, so no idea if that last clip recorded. So I was just talking about what we think we're going to do with the car, what my plans are, which I haven't decided yet. Obviously all of this is subject to change, and if anyone's got any ideas, feel free to message me or put it in the comments below. I've been trying to think of all the things that I would change if I did it again, to hopefully re-engineer that now while we've got it apart. And I think what I've decided is the best plan is going to be to just completely strip the car again, pull the engine out, rip everything off the bottom of it, because it's been sat around. I imagine the underside needs some treatment and some attention, because I haven't actually done, I don't think I've actually done any welding on this car ever. I could be corrected, but I don't remember ever having to, so very likely there's going to be some bits and pieces that need tidying up. And I'd like to strip it all back and sort it anyway. It's been years since it was done. And then put the car back together again with some, well, changes basically, both cosmetically, engine-wise and inside. So cosmetically wise, I'd like to return the front of the car to look original again. So you'll remember, to accommodate, or back in the day, to accommodate that huge intercooler, which I should point out for this engine is not necessary. But anyway, to accommodate that, I took the phase 1 front bumper off because it was too shallow, there wasn't room. We sort of retrofitted the phase 3 one and modified the grille, made it all work, and it kind of looked okay. But I really would like to get that completely original again. Phase 1 bumper, complete grille, put all the grille back in the bumper and everything, or as much as possible anyway, and try to make it look a bit more factory. Well, I know it's John Deere green, but try and get it looking just like a bit more of a factory looking car. I don't think there's a lot else cosmetically on the exterior that needs sorting, but on the interior, I think that's where I'd really like to make some changes. You remember we literally, quite literally, cut half the dash out, which in my wisdom at the time was wonderful, and then just put all the electronics and stuff in here, which in fairness is brilliant because it's really easy to work on. But it's kind of a little bit in your face when you're riding around in the car, and it looks a bit ridiculous, and if you park it anywhere you're kind of worried that, there's nothing here now of any value. This is all such old stuff now, it's worthless, quite honestly. But regardless of that, I'd like to put a complete dash back in it. I've got another dash here. I want to make it all factory again. I don't want any of these gauges bolted to the dash or in the dash. I'd like to get everything removed that shouldn't be there, put everything through the ECU, which it is anyway, so everything's in the ECU anyway, so there's no reason really to have it all there in individual displays more than just for monitoring. And so in theory I should be able to get rid of all that, set up engine protection and stuff in the logic of the ECU, and be confident that it will look after itself, kind of thing. Now I'm not saying I won't have anything at all. It would be quite nice to have some sort of universal gauge that I can sort of use to scroll through multiple information, but just in one small package that can just be accommodated somewhere tidily, without being all over the dash. I'd like to try and put the majority of the interior back in. I think I haven't totally decided. I ripped it all out in the day. It just reduced the weight as much as possible, and it kind of adds to the the thrill of the car. It makes more noise, you can hear what's going on. But like I said, for day-to-day use, it's all just really annoying because you get condensation on everything. The roof makes a racket when it rains. So I've still got, as far as I think, I've still got all of the trim and stuff for it. I did keep it all. So hopefully we can, I think the plan is to try and put all the trim back in it. The rear seats, I still haven't decided on that, but obviously they're in it. We put them back in for the Euro trip because we wanted to have a secure boot, both from a security point of view, but also to keep all the noise down in the car. So they were kind of quickly put in for the Euro trip, but there's currently no seat belts and anything in here. So we either need to get all the seat belts refitted in the rear quarter panel, door cards and stuff, or they may stay out. I haven't really decided on that. So I think if we could sort the dash out and put the bits of trim and stuff in and just get it looking like a bit more of a factory car again, somewhere where you're quite happy to jump in and drive it without all this chaos going on constantly, because it's kind of, well, I just feel like there's no need for it really anymore, and it would be nice to try and conceal it. So that's kind of going to be a fairly major project in itself. And then obviously the big thing is the engine. What are we going to do with the refresh? Now, number one priority is I want to put the compression back as it should be, because the number one thing that is really annoying on this is the fact that it doesn't have enough compression for when it's cold, basically. And there is nothing more annoying than taking a car out, parking somewhere in public, and then having to go out in the morning or whatever and fire this thing up, and it's like you're at a tractor pulling event, and there's, you know, smoke and clag pouring down the road, all kinds of noise going on. And the annoying thing is there's absolutely really no need for it on this engine, because it's, well, especially not at the moment, it's certainly not making anything like enough boost or power to require any decomp, never mind a drastic one like we've got in here at the moment. So first job would be to rip the engine out, completely tear it down to a short block, and put the short block back to factory length rods, which will then give us our factory compression ratio back. Now, well, the slightly annoying thing about this is we're not going to be able to use the block that's in it at the minute, because I decked that block aggressively at the time to try and at least get some of my compression ratio back when we built the engine. So obviously now, if I put the factory length rods back in it, we're going to have mental piston protrusion, and it's just not going to work. So I've got another block. I've had it for donkeys. In fact, I showed it in the channel revival video, whenever that was. So rebuild the short block, put the engine back together, largely the same actual engine-wise, head and everything. Injectors can go back in as they are, but obviously when this is up and running again, the injectors will obviously immediately be a problem, and I have a plan for that. So obviously in the last 10 years or however long it's been, turbo technology has moved on leaps and bounds, as it had when I built this compared to 5 years before. So everything on here is pretty dated now, as is quite a lot of the fabrication and stuff is, you know, questionable now. You know, it's obviously what I was doing years ago, but now if I was doing it again, I wouldn't do it like that. And again, the same with some of the wiring and just the way that some of it's done. I'd like to do it again, basically, because I know I'd be able to do it better now, if that makes sense. The other thing is, as cool as it is having sort of compound turbos and all this stuff going on, this engine bay is an absolute nightmare to work on if anything goes wrong more though than what you can see. So if you've got to get down the back of it or do anything in here or the transmission or anything, you've got like half a day's work just tearing all this apart and then having to put it all back together again. And it's just not very ideal. So I think probably a good part of the plan also, as I was just saying, and the GoPro died again, I just want to try and simplify stuff if possible, make a bit more room. And it might mean going back to single turbo. I haven't decided yet, I haven't made my mind up, but we might go back to a single turbo setup, possibly with some assistance of other forms. I really haven't decided yet, and it kind of doesn't matter at this point, because at the minute I just want to get it all apart. But I would like to try and simplify that area of the engine bay, well, all areas of the engine bay, to make it just easier to work on and easier to see what's going on. Probably just rambled on, and none of that really makes any sense at all. But anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to lift the car up. I'm going to drop the fluids out of the transmission and the engine, and basically going to start taking the engine out. So we'll pull all the front end off, and obviously all the rest of the bits and pieces that need disconnecting, and then we'll lift it out. The very first job, actually, I need to just whip the drive shafts out first, because I need to get a casting number off the back of the block. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll see how we get on. If we have time, we'll get all the front end pulled off, and we'll just go from there. I honestly can't really remember what's entailed, because it's been years since I've worked on this. So I'll try and set the camera up, and we'll maybe do like a time lapse or something, and we'll just get this thing pulled apart. And yeah, so I guess technically speaking, this is going to be the 2024-2025 revival of the D-Turbo. Not sure on the actual plan as of right now. Open for any ideas or thoughts anyone's got. I think the general theme is going to be to get the car back to a more factory-looking, more daily usable car, except obviously still wanting to push the power hard. Get the cosmetics, like I said, the front end back to factory. Get the engine so it's just on the key, anyone can jump in it and drive it without having to worry about it, and just sort out basically all the little niggles and annoying things that have always been sort of existent on it since the last build. Try and sort all them out now, and obviously hopefully move forwards as well. So let's get it up in the air and start tearing this thing apart. So that'll be the last time it runs on that setup.